The first thing I remember is the fire. The flickering orange glow reflected in the soot-smeared walls of the orphanage, and the acrid smell of smoke still haunts my dreams. I was 12, no older, clutching the small satchel my mother had pressed into my hands the night she disappeared. I never saw her again, only the chaos left behind, the screams, the collapsing beams, the shadows of people I never knew. That night marked the beginning of my exile from innocence. I wandered the streets of Ravenscorn, a labyrinth of towers and alleys, scavenging for scraps. The city thrummed with danger. Shards of neon light glinted off wet cobblestones, as if the world itself mocked me. It was survival by instinct, one wrong move, and the scavenger became the prey. I found refuge in the underbelly of the city, a network of abandoned tunnels beneath the grand avenues. It was there that I met Yerrick, a grizzled mercenary whose reputation for ruthlessness was whispered even in the council halls. He took one look at me, a scrappy, starving orphan, and saw potential rather than weakness. "You've got eyes that can see what others ignore," he said one night, tossing a small knife into my hands. "And hands that can do what others won't. Stick with me, and maybe you'll live to be more than a shadow." I didn't have a choice. The streets offered only hunger and death. So I followed him, and thus began my transformation from orphan to mercenary. Years passed in a blur of contracts, fights, and blood. I became a ghost in the war zones of Arinder, a skilled fighter known only by whispers. The Silver Ghost, they called me, for the streak of silver hair that fell over my eyes, though I'd never intended it to become my signature. I fought for coin, for survival, for nothing and everything all at once. I was part of 100 battles, seen empires crumble, and yet I never imagined that my path would intersect with royalty. Until the mission came. It was delivered in the form of a sealed hollow letter, flickering with the emblem of the crown itself. I should have burned it. Anyone who works for the crown is a dangerous association for a mercenary like me. But curiosity, that dangerous human flaw, drew me in. The message was simple. An urgent matter requires your skills. Discretion is paramount. The queen herself requests your presence at the palace. I laughed bitterly. Queen Althora Valen, a name that had echoed through the halls of power while I scavenged through the refuse of her city. I wasn't even meant to exist in her world, let alone enter it. But the promise of a fat purse, and perhaps a chance to finally understand why fate had always tormented me, was irresistible. The palace was a cathedral of glass and steel, rising above Ravenscorn like a monument to human ambition. Security was tight, yet I slipped past guards with the ease that comes from years of navigating shadows. I was inside the grand throne room before the queen even knew I had arrived. She was nothing like I imagined. Queen Althora Valen was regal, yes, but there was a weariness in her eyes, a quiet sorrow that betrayed the facade of power. I realized then that we were not so different. She, like me, carried scars no one else could see. "You are not who I expected," she said, her voice steady but tinged with curiosity. "I never expected to be expected," I replied, bowing lightly out of habit rather than respect. She studied me, suspicion flickering across her features. "Your name?" I hesitated. A name carries weight, especially in royal circles. It is more than identity. It is history, alliances, and grudges. I could have lied. I could have chosen another alias, as I had done countless times before. But for the first time in years, I felt the pull of something I thought lost. Truth. "Darian Core," I said, my voice low. Her eyes widened. For a fleeting second, the room seemed to shrink, the polished floors echoing the silence between us. "Darian?" she whispered, almost to herself. "That boy from the fire at the orphanage?" I did not answer. There was no need. Recognition burned in her gaze. Memories that were meant to be buried resurfaced in the flicker of a single name. I was ushered into the inner sanctum of the palace. The queen explained a reason for summoning me. A rogue faction known as the Ashen Syndicate had stolen a prototype weapon capable of destabilizing entire cities. The Crown's intelligence had tracked the weapon to the industrial sprawl of Varelia, and my reputation as a shadow operative made me the only viable option to recover it. The mission was brutal. The Syndicate's fortress was a fortress in every sense. Walls of reinforced alloy, surveillance drones buzzing like metallic hornets, traps hidden in every corridor. I infiltrated under cover of night, blending into shadows with a precision honed over years. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Syndicate soldiers were efficient and merciless, but they underestimated the Silver Ghost. One by one, I neutralized them, leaving a trail of silence and confusion. In the central chamber, I found the weapon, a sleek, black device pulsing with energy like the heart of a storm trapped in metal. I reached for it, and the alarm screamed to life. Reinforcements flooded in. I fought, knives and blades flashing, laser fire igniting the walls. My adrenaline was a familiar friend, yet a strange thought intruded. If I die here, the queen will never know who I truly became. I gritted my teeth, focused, and fought with a ferocity I did not know I possessed. By the time the last guard fell, I had secured the device, my uniform singed, my hands slick with sweat and blood. Returning to the palace was no less dangerous. The weapon was unstable, and any misstep could turn it into a city killer. I moved through the corridors like a phantom, heart pounding. When I finally handed it to Queen Althra Valen, I expected relief, perhaps gratitude, but I received something else entirely. She did not speak immediately. Her hands trembled slightly as she examined the device, and then she looked at me, really looked. You have done what none of my guards could. You've saved thousands. I shrugged, hiding the weariness behind my mercenary facade. I did what needed to be done. No, she said softly. You did more than that. You've returned to me. Confusion clouded my expression. Returned? She stepped closer. You were always part of my court, in a way I could not understand until now. Your mother, she was my confidant, my hand in the shadows. When she died, you were taken from me. I did not know what became of you. The word struck me harder than any blade. I, an orphan, have been a pawn in royal intrigues, my life stolen by fate and circumstance. Yet here I was, standing before the woman who could have been my guardian, my family, and I had become someone she could not ignore. You knew my mother? I whispered, the weight of years pressing down on my shoulders. Yes, she admitted, tears glinting in her eyes. And now, you've returned to me, Darian. It was a reunion shrouded in unspoken regret, a bridge across time and trauma. The palace walls no longer felt alien. They were familiar, resonating with memories I had never known. In the weeks that followed, I took up a new role, not merely a mercenary for hire, but a protector of the realm, a shadow operative for the crown. My missions remained perilous, yet they had purpose beyond survival. I was no longer just a ghost in the wars of others. I was a force for the queen, for the people, for the world that had once abandoned me. Queen Althra Valen and I developed an unspoken partnership, forged not by blood alone, but by shared battles, secrets, and the recognition that even the strongest rulers need those who move unseen. And yet, even in this life of newfound purpose, I kept the memory of the fire alive. It was a reminder of where I came from, of the child who had clawed through darkness to survive. That child had shaped the man I had become, the silver ghost, the mercenary, the Queen's shadow. I realized that fate had a cruel sense of irony. It tore me from my past only to thrust me back into it when I had the strength to endure it. And when my name finally escaped, spoken aloud in the throne room, in the presence of the Queen, it was not a return to innocence. It was a reclamation of identity, of agency, of power long denied. Years later, when I stand over the city of Ravenscorn at dusk, cloaked in the silver of my mercenary garb, I sometimes hear the echoes of that fire. The screams, the smoke, the small, frightened child. And I smile. Not for the past I cannot change, but for the life I have carved from it. The Queen walks beside me, a presence both distant and intimate, guiding the world from her throne while I guide it from the shadows. We share a bond built on survival, trust, and the unspoken knowledge of how easily a life can be lost and found again. I am Darian Core, once an orphan, now a mercenary, now a force that the realm cannot ignore. And in the quiet moments, when the city sleeps, I allow myself a rare thought. Perhaps some fires are meant to forge, not destroy. The silver ghost walks on, unbound by fear, known at last, not for the shadows I inhabit, but for the truth that my name carries. The weeks after the mission blurred into a strange rhythm of duty and discovery. My days were no longer spent dodging death in dark alleys or fighting for scraps in industrial sprawl of Verinder. Instead, I moved through the palace corridors with a sense of purpose I had never known. I trained alongside the Queen's elite guards, advised on covert operations, and sometimes, just sometimes, allowed myself to remember what it meant to belong. Queen Althera Valen never treated me as a tool, even though I often felt like one. She asked questions about my missions, my decisions, my past, and listened. Her curiosity was gentle but probing, and it forced me to confront the parts of myself I had buried under years of survival. One evening, we stood on the balcony of the throne room, overlooking the glittering expanse of Ravenscorn. The city lights flickered like a galaxy laid out at our feet. "You've changed," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the night wind. I turned to her, watching the tension in her shoulders, the faint furrow of worry etched into her forehead. "We all change," I replied. "Some for better, some for worse." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried relief, pride, and sorrow all at once. "You've become someone I can trust. Not just for the crown, but for me." I felt a weight settle in my chest, a mix of disbelief and a strange warmth I hadn't allowed myself in years. "I'm still Darian Core," I said. "I'm still that boy from the fire, the tunnels, the streets. But I've learned to survive differently now." "Yes," she said, her hand brushing mine lightly, almost imperceptibly. "And now you are more than survival. You are purpose. You are hope." The words were heavy with meaning, and I realized then that the bond we shared was not just blood or history. It was forged in fire, loss, and trust. I had always believed that being an orphan meant being alone, but now I understood. Family could be chosen, shaped by shared trials and truths. The silver ghost, the mercenary feared across systems, became something more than a name whispered in fear. I became the Queen's shadow, her silent hand in wars that could destroy or protect countless lives. Missions came, dangerous and complex, yet I faced them with a new kind of resolve. No longer did I move for coin alone. I moved for justice, for those who had no voice, for the memory of the mother who had been taken from me, and for the child I once was. One mission changed everything. The Ashen Syndicate, thought broken after the weapon retrieval, had reassembled, more cunning and ruthless than before. Intelligence indicated they planned an assassination attempt during the Queen's address to the Assembly of Nations, a gathering that could alter the political balance of the entire galaxy. I infiltrated the assembly under the guise of a diplomat's aide, my movements precise, my presence unnoticed. The syndicate's agents moved like predators through the crowd, their intentions clear. I intercepted them in the hidden corridors beneath the assembly hall, disarming explosives, neutralizing threats, and saving countless lives once more. The Queen's gaze met mine as the chaos ended. No words were needed. She understood, always had. Finally, after years of wandering, fighting, and hiding, I returned to the orphanage ruins, not for nostalgia, but for closure. The fire that had defined the start of my life had long since consumed the physical structure, leaving only charred stone and memories. Yet standing there, I did not feel fear or loss. I felt completion. I knelt in the ash, letting the wind carry my whispered promise. I survived. I became more. I'll honor you, Mother, in all that I do. The past had shaped me, but it did not define me. I was no longer a shadow lurking at the edges of a world I could never belong to. I had claimed my place, not through birthright, but through courage, resilience, and the refusal to disappear. In the throne room, the Queen held a ceremony not of pomp, but of recognition. She spoke to the court, her voice steady and commanding, yet threaded with emotion. Today, we honor one who walked among us in shadows, unseen and unacknowledged, yet whose actions have shaped the safety and destiny of our realm. Darien Core, once an orphan, now our shield, our shadow, and a son of Cletheria. The chamber erupted in murmurs and applause. I stood silently, letting the acknowledgement wash over me. For the first time, my life's journey, the pain, the trials, the mercenary years, was validated not by survival alone, but by purpose and recognition. The Queen approached and placed her hand lightly on my shoulder. Your name carries more than history now. It carries hope. I nodded, unable to speak, feeling the full weight of a lifetime condensed into a single moment. The orphan, the scavenger, the mercenary, they were all part of me, but I had emerged whole. And when the court bowed, not out of fear but out of respect, I understood something profound. Recognition is more than sight. It is acknowledgement of all that a person has endured and overcome. The Queen did not just see me. She knew me. Later, I walked the palace corridors alone, the silver streak of my hair catching the torchlight. Shadows stretched long across the polished floors, yet they no longer felt like threats. They were reminders of how far I had come. I paused by a window overlooking Ravenscorn, watching the city that had once been a prison and now a home. I could hear the distant hum of airships, the laughter of citizens in the streets, the faint call of the night markets. Life continued, fragile and beautiful, as it always had. And I was part of it, not as a ghost, not as an unseen mercenary, but as Darien Core, the boy who had run from fire and found his place among stars. The silver ghost would always exist, a whisper in the underworld, a guardian in the shadows. But I had a new name now, a new identity, and a new family. I had earned it, not through inheritance, not through power, but through endurance, courage, and truth. I closed my eyes and let the wind brush my face, carrying away the last remnants of doubt, fear, and loss. The past had tested me, but the present had reclaimed me. And in the quiet of the night, I finally allowed myself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, I was home. The Queen did not need to recognize me again. I had proven it through my actions, my loyalty, and my name. And when it escaped, spoken aloud in the throne room, it was not a cry of desperation. It was a declaration.